welcome to the video edition of the Bidline Bulletin. In this edition, we are going to be talking about vacation bidding. When we're talking about vacation bidding, I'm talking about what we do for vacation elections. On the PBS side, this is not having anything to do with bidding your multiple weeks for the entire year. There's a couple locations where you can find the vacation preference option guide. The first place right here in the eDocs section, if you click here, you can find the vacation preferences folder for some directions as well. And also the folder lives in the vacation preferences section right here under pilot vacation preference options. So this is what you're going to use in order to make your elections for different amounts of credit and violet days and all the other options that we have under the PBS MOU for changing your vacation credit and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this folder and cover a few things here. So in this folder to start, we're going to talk about what the default value is on your vacation. Default value is 28 hours for that week. Most of you that are in, we'll just say, for example, in your first 5 years are going to get 56 hours a week. So that 28 hours is basically the 56 divided by 2, obviously. Now you can use more credit than that on one week more than the other, but just remember, for a lot of you, you have 56 hours to start. So if you use a bunch of credit in one vacation week, you're going to have a lot less credit in the next week. So some things to consider with that. As far as strategies, the more vacation value that you use in a particular month, overall, the less amount of working days that you're typically going to end up with. As far as reserve is concerned, basically for every 4 hours of extra vacation credit that you use is going to add up to one less working day on reserve. Another thing before we go too far, as far as inviolate days, if you are going to be on reserve, or if you think you are going to be on reserve, you should take your inviolate days as paid. The reason for that is, as we show down here, reserve line holders must have 4 hours per inviolate day deducted from the vacation bank. Now, let's say that you wanted a way to sort of make sure that you take them paid but not use any more credit. Just a quick example of that would be, let's say you only want to use 28 hours of vacation still, because that's the standard amount for the standard week. What you could do is elect 20 hours in your vacation value and then take 2 paid inviolate days, and you'll still have a total of 28 hours used, because the paid inviolate days are always going to be equal to 4 hours. Something else to consider is vacation value is divided up on a per day basis. So what sometimes people have questions about is, let's say you have a vacation that carries in from one month to the next month. Well, what you do is, say you have a 28-hour vacation, you divide that by 7, and that's 4 hours per day. So if you were to spread out vacation value over 2 different months, whatever days that you have, let's say you have 4 days in one month and 3 in another, well, in the month that you had 4 vacation days, you would have 4 hours each, or 16 hours, and in the next 3 days, which may fall into the following month, you would have 12 hours. And then, of course, if you added inviolate days or something else, that would change too. Another question that we get is, why do I have an odd amount of vacation? I elected 30 hours or whatever the case is. So the reason for that being, of course, again, that the vacation value needs to be divided up per day. So let's say you use the 30-hour vacation over 7 days. What that equals is about 4.28 hours per day. So if you take 4.28 and take off all the extra numbers off of that, and just do the 4.28 and multiply that number by 7, you're actually using 29 hours and 96 if we're not using minutes to divide that up instead of just decimal points. So instead of actually using 30 hours, you're actually using just a little bit less than 30 hours. So that's something to consider. So if you have an odd amount vacation or like a decimal value, that's the reason why, because it has to be divided up on a per day basis. But let's say in that case that you had 4.28 hours. It would be 4.28 hours for the 7 days of the vacation, but if you took paid inviolate days, those are always an even 4 hours if they are paid. So we're going to have some questions on the vacation preferences folder. We'll cover this again when we open it up. The first is vacation slide. You can slide your actual vacation forward or backward up to 3 days on either side. The standard is, of course, 0 slide. So if you use a negative vacation value, that means you're going to bring that week to earlier in the year is probably the best way I can explain it. So if you want to go earlier in the year, you use a negative value. If you want to go later in the year, you use a positive value. It could be up to +1, 2, or 3, or up to -1, 2, or 3. Now, vacation value. The vacation value, the minimum that you can elect is 12 hours. Now, let's say that you have less than 12 hours in your vacation bank. In the contract, it says that you can hold a vacation week with a minimum of 8 hours. So if you elect 12, but say you only have 9 hours of vacation, that value is going to be changed. And when you initially elect that vacation, when you first log in to look at NavBlue and your PBS bid, you may see a total value of 12 hours, even though you only have 9 in your bank. What happens at some point during the week while the bid's open, Crew Planning runs what's called a vacation audit. That vacation audit goes in and essentially makes sure that you have at least the minimum credit value that you have elected. If you don't, they will adjust it accordingly. So in the case of if you elected 12 hours and you only had 9, well, they would change that value to 9 hours, but you would still be allowed to keep that week. Now, another question that we get a lot is, I used all my vacation time, so why does my vacation week still show up? Well, it's because you were awarded that week, so it still shows up. Now, what happens if you have less than 8 hours during that vacation audit, which will happen sometime during the PBS bid opening time between the 7th or the 12th, they will remove that vacation week. Now, unfortunately, the way NavBlue operates is there's only an update to what you see in NavBlue whenever there is a CrewTrack import. That CrewTrack import only happens on before the bid is open, basically right before the 7th at noon at some point, and then it happens again when we go to actually start doing the bid runs, so after the 12th at noon. So even if Crew Plan has made some kind of update, let's say for instance they didn't get your slide in there correctly, or they didn't give you the correct vacation value, you wouldn't see the update even if you've gotten a reply via email that it will be fixed. You may not see that updated value until after the bids close, possibly because of there hasn't been a CrewTrack import. As far as who you need to email if you have an issue like that, the pilot_PBS_issues email at spirit.com is the email that you're going to list for that. If I said that too fast, you can always find that on the ALPA website as well. That PBS issues email goes to the ALPA committee and it goes to the Spirit Crew Plan committee that handles these issues. So with that being said, even though it's a Spirit email, always use a non-Spirit email of your own to send communications like that, or to any ALPA committee because of ALPA policy. That way we can respond to it. And Crew Planning and all those departments, they can respond to email addresses that aren't Spirit email addresses, so it's not a big deal. Okay, continuing on, inviolate days. Question 1 here. Do you wish to have inviolate days, yes or no? The default answer is no. If you want them, answer yes. Pretty plain and simple. You get up to 2 inviolate days per vacation week. So if you have 2 vacation weeks in the same bid period, you get up to 4 inviolate days. If you have 3 weeks, you get up to 6 inviolate days, and so on. Okay, question number 2, how many inviolate days? Do you want 1 or do you want 2? And of course, if you answered no, then either you wouldn't answer this question or you would just put 0. Okay, question number 3, what side or where do you want to place the inviolate days? So what does this mean? You can place inviolate days both before, both after, or one on each end. Or if you only answered one, then you would obviously get one on one side or another. So the nice thing about this is you can technically, with a slide and with inviolate days, you can basically move your vacation up to 5 days in one direction if needed. So take that into consideration and use your slide appropriately. And question number 4 goes back to what we talked a little bit about earlier. Question number 4, would you like these inviolate days to be paid or unpaid? I almost always suggest that if you're going to take inviolate days, take them paid and adjust your vacation total credit for the week accordingly and just take the paid inviolate days. That's always my best recommendation that I give to everybody. Once all the questions are answered, click OK. And this is the reminder down at the bottom. One thing, vacation elections are open from the 19th to the 24th at noon Eastern. Something else to consider, let's say you have a vacation week that is early in the month. Vacation elections are made on the 19th through the 24th, and it's what we say 2 calendar months prior. So if you have a March vacation, you're going to make those vacation elections in January. The reason it's in January on the 24th is because in reality, that's only about 2 weeks, give or take, before the actual PBS bid opens for that particular month. So if the elections close on the 24th of January, 6 days later is the 30th, another 7 days after that, so really about 13 days later, depending on if it's a 30 or 31 day month or whatever, the PBS bid would open for that month of March. So that's why it's 2 calendar months prior. Now another question, what if you have a week early in the month and you would want to slide that vacation back into the previous month? Well, you have to have a vacation folder open to make those requests. So if you don't have this folder here where it says vacation preferences options, you can't make those elections. So you need to email that pilot_pbsissues@spirit.com 2 calendar months prior to the month that you want to slide back into. So again, let's use a March vacation week as an example. Let's say you want to slide a March vacation week back into February. Well, now, instead of having to make a vacation election in January, you actually need to make that vacation election in December. So the best idea that I can give you for all this, as we know people forget, is once you've got your vacation weeks, go in there and set yourself a calendar reminder, throughout the year for those weeks that you have vacations, 2 months prior on the 19th to remember to make these vacation elections. That way you don't forget. Okay, last thing, in bold, you will not see anything under my request nor receive a bid confirmation. Once your elections are submitted, you just click OK. You won't see a pending notification there, and that'll make a little sense when I show you that part of it. Another recommendation here, go ahead and take a screenshot of your vacation elections when you submit them and just save them for safekeeping until that bid's open, and you can make sure that when you log into NavBlue that your vacation was set up correctly for you. So now that we've covered all that, we're going to go into submit or view request under the vacation preferences options. So this is what it's going to look like. Again, even after you submit, it's going to look just like this in blank form here. Now, we're going to go into additional bid options, click that. Now we have all of our elections. So, this is another question we have. This is my second week of the year. Don't I need to answer questions under week 2? No, the answer is no. Week 1 vacation is for any vacation week that's the first week of that particular month that you're doing vacation elections. So the only reason you would ever use week 2 vacation questions or week 3 is if you have more than one vacation in that same month. Again, never answer week 2 vacation value or week 3 unless you have more than one vacation in the same exact month. So if you have, say, 3 weeks of vacation for the entire year, if they're all in different months, every time you're going to only answer questions in week 1 vacation question slides. So we'll start off week 1 vacation slide. We're going to click the box. And again, do you want no slide would be 0. Let's say I want to shift my vacation backwards 2 days. So that's going to be -2. Negative number, again, indicates an earlier date. So earlier in the year, however you want to say it, if you want the vacation earlier in the year, you use a negative number. If you want it later in the year, you use a positive number. We're going to hit apply. So we can see we've got an election made up there. Now we're going to say week 1 vacation value. So we're going to go in, we're going to kind of use that strategy that I talked about, and we're going to say we're going to use 20 hours of vacation. We're going to hit apply. Question 1, inviolate days. Do I want them? I'm going to say yes. We're going to hit apply. Now, week 1, inviolate days. Question 2, how many inviolate days do we want? I want 2 of them. All right, question 3, inviolate day location. I'm going to say I want 1 on each side. Doesn't matter if you want 1 on each side, that splits them. If you want on the front of the vacation, it means earlier in the year. If you want the end of the vacation, it's going to be the days later in the year. Just remember that when you're making that slide, just try to, count those days out on the calendar to make sure you're getting exactly the days set up that you want. Okay, so that one shows up as both, which is 1 on each side. And then question number 4, last but not least, do you want them paid or unpaid? Well, again, in my strategy, I wanted them to be paid because I'm still only using a total of 28 hours in this case. And it reminds you again, if you are awarded reserve, invalid days are required to be paid. So let's say you didn't think you'd end up on reserve and you took unpaid invalid days. What would happen? Crew plan is going to go back in there and they're going to manually make those days paid. Now, sometimes they may, give you a little grace and say, okay, well, yeah, you made a mistake, and maybe that after, you ended up on reserve, we can change your vacation credit. Don't expect that. I'm just telling you, if you think or you have any chance of possibly being on reserve, take the invalid days paid right away. You can just adjust your vacation credit accordingly. So now we've answered all of the questions that matter all on week 1. Again, we only have 1 week in this month. The only reason we would answer anything week 2 vacation would be if you had 2 vacation weeks in the same month. Something else to consider here. Vacation values. Now, let's say you're somebody that likes to cash out a lot of your vacation using GFDs or something, and you want to take a low vacation value. Just remember that, say you went down to 12 hours, which is the lowest, and then you didn't take, and you took unpaid invalid days. So if you had 12 hours of vacation and 2 unpaid invalid days, you've now blocked out 9 days of the month with only 12 hours of credit. So what that means is, let's say it's a 30-day month. You essentially have 21 days in the rest of the month to come up to meet the threshold credit if you intend to be a line holder. That can be tough depending on your seniority. So basically, if you're using a very low vacation value, just be cautious of that could give you an unintended consequence of possibly ending up on reserve, possibly. Which in that case, if you took unpaid invalid days, they would end up being paid because you end up being on reserve. So, something to consider. If you have any questions, we have some of this information in our PBS QRM. That's located on the ALPA website. It's also located under the ALPA tab in Comply. Once you're done with all this, you hit the OK button. And again, we're going to remember it's not going to show up in the request. So we're just going to hit OK. This is what I would recommend taking a screenshot of right here, and then just save it, email it to yourself, or whatever the case is, with a reminder to check that when you open up your NAPU calendar on the 7th of the following month. We hit OK. Again, there is nothing that pops up here. This is another question we get. Once you hit OK, that thing is submitted. It can be changed. That's not an issue. If you want to go back there and re-edit it, you can do that, but it doesn't actually show up. Now, if I open that back up, everything does show in there, So it has been submitted. We just hit OK. But unfortunately, there's no request status that actually shows that. All right, so that's all we have edition for this video edition of the Bidline Bulletin about vacation bidding.